we are taught, raised, and conditioned to shut down our truth, our understandings about ourselves and the world, and the way that we show up in the world. This is that somatic repression that gets passed down. Your inner child deserves everything you've ever wanted, and a part of the way to getting that is by learning to trust your intuition. So this month's theme is going to be reclaiming and understanding intuition for people who have experienced childhood trauma. Hi, my name is Toni. I'm a somatic guide and energy healer, and I like to support people in healing their inner child through energy work and somatic work. And this month's theme is trusting your intuition. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about how people who experience trauma learn to disconnect from their intuition, and some, quick and dirty little tips to begin reconnecting to your intuition once you're ready to start reconnecting to your intuition. The thing is, so many childhood trauma survivors oftentimes tend to believe that their fear, their triggers, and the roles that they have taken on to survive are more important, and better yet, actually their intuition. So oftentimes you may feel fearful to take a step. You may feel fearful to take an active step to be a participant in your own life because fear is getting in the way. And somehow you think that that fear is your intuition rather than a feeling that is there that is trying to protect you from something that taking that action or that step would potentially cause. And a lot of times this has to do with vulnerability and being vulnerable. So for instance, in this moment, I'm, creating a video and putting out this podcast episode, and I could lean into the fear of posting or being here or showing up and providing my support in this way on video and audio, wherever you're listening from. And I could allow my fear to tell me that I shouldn't be posting on here. And I could allow that fear, I could mistake that fear for my very own intuition and say, well, I just got this intuitive hit that's what I didn't need to do this. And so oftentimes it's about the ways that we show up in the world. So oftentimes, one of the ways that trauma disconnects you from your very own intuition. The thing about intuition, before we even get into how or why trauma blocks your intuition, let's talk about your intuition in and of itself. Whether you're a mother, we talk about mother's intuition or women's intuition or gut feelings. We talk about these things as if they are floating in the ethers, which they are, but they're also deeply embodied in our sense of self and the way that we show up in the world. So if you are a person that gets gut instincts, this is intuition. This is oftentimes what we call intuition. It's this nudge, this feeling that something is a certain way or that you need to do a certain thing. And this gets crosswired, this gets a little hijacked by the nervous system if you experience chronic stress and or significant traumatic events, whether they're in childhood or not. I always say childhood trauma survivors because those are the people that I work with mostly. But whether it's in childhood or not, chronic stress and significant traumatic events will distort your perception of reality, specifically when it comes to trusting yourself. And so the first thing that trauma teaches you is to doubt yourself. This is why the narcissist uses the playbook of gaslighting, because they know that if they spend enough energy, spend enough stories, they can confuse you and make it seem like you are the one who doesn't know anything. And yes, narcissistic abuse is abuse, and it is a traumatic event. It is deeply traumatic to be in relationship with someone, whether romantic or not, with someone who is narcissistic. If you have narcissistic parents, you have learned to have a deep distrust for yourself and your intuition. Now let's talk about why you begin to disconnect from your own intuition, your own truth when you've experienced trauma. So one of the reasons is that your nervous system is going haywire. Okay, you're in fight, flight, freeze, fawn. You're in those nervous system points, and your nervous system takes over to wire you to survive, to get through to another day. And that's what's important. And sometimes intuition comes in and says things that do not make sense. It is not going to make sense to the logical mind. And sometimes your intuition goes super opposed to a nervous system in survival. So if you're in survival and the only thing you can do is run from thing to thing, place to place, person to person, and your intuition says, hey, why don't you take a break and go sit under that tree in the park? Your nervous system is like, what are you talking about? The park is unsafe. I don't need to do that. Sitting is unsafe. Being with myself is unsafe. Silence is unsafe. So your nervous system is firing all these cues that are so much louder than your intuition and make so much more sense. This is why when your life shifts and you're no longer in a place where you need to survive and you can start to unwind your nervous system, oftentimes you're stuck in all the actions and thoughts of survival, and your intuition is the scariest thing to tap into because it doesn't give you the why. Your intuition isn't going to say, oh, go to the park and then sit under this tree and then you're going to get this idea, and this idea is going to lead to you meeting these people, and these people are going to help you do X. Your intuition isn't saying all that. What you hear your intuition say is go sit at the park under a tree. And for someone who is just trying to get by and has been for the last 50 years, that's not going to make a whole lot of sense. And oftentimes, because we have disconnected ourselves from our bodies so deeply, the intuition is a felt sense. It is a body sense rather than a mind sense. And we've disconnected right here around the throat and heart chakra area so that we don't feel all our cues and understandings from our intuition. And instead, we shift into the mind. And so if it doesn't make logical sense, we don't do it. And yet I know every single person has listened to that little nudge of intuition at least once in their life and had some cool, magical shit happen because they did. So when you're wired for survival, you shift from being able to experience magical unwindings in your life that don't make sense to anyone, and yet they're just happening. I once had someone say, it's like you walk the path and it's there. It's like, no, I'm just listening to my intuition. I'm just listening to my intuition and life unfolds. And so often, if you are stuck in the nervous system of someone who is just trying to get by, you're going to miss the opportunities that your intuition, your life, and your guides are trying to give you. And as you disconnect from self, from body, and only think and live through the mind, not only are you easier to control because people mess with people's minds all the time, but also you come up to this point where the only thing that you can go for is what you can perceive to be true in your mind. There are things that I know without a shadow of a doubt And my mind cannot conceive of how to get me there. And that's okay. That's not my mind's job. That's why I fall back on my intuition. And because the traumas have created these doubts within you, you listen to the doubt over your intuition. You listen to the doubt, the fear, the criticism over what you know. I feel like everyone's had an experience where they got a feeling, or sometimes you think it's a thought or a feeling, or just this knowing that person wasn't right, that you shouldn't date that person, that you shouldn't go to that place tonight, that you did not need to go to that party tonight. And then that place was on the news. That's the most extreme example, but that place was on the news and something went down that night. Or turns out that person was on the Facebook, have you dated this person? Are we dating the same person group or something, you know? Like, everyone's had some experience where that little nudge has been proven right. And everybody's had that experience where they didn't listen to that nudge at all and everything went wrong. It was bad. And you're like, man, I should have listened. And oftentimes it's these things in the back of your head, and because you're in survival mode, you're not listening to yourself because you cannot hear yourself over the criticism and the fear and the doubts and the nervous system that creates patterns and wirings in your brain to keep you from listening to your intuition, because your intuition does not make sense to your brain, to your mind. And the thing about when you experience trauma is that your perspective shrinks. It shrinks your mind's perspective of what can be perceived for you. This is oftentimes if you grew up in poverty. A lot of people could not conceive of not being in poverty. So it's like, I'm gonna make this decision based on the fact that I'm in poverty and I will never have a way out, or that I can't possibly go to college because whatever reason that trauma has placed on you for why you can't do this thing. And then you never perceive or conceive of the idea that something could be for you, even if you have this feeling inside of you that you should be going for it, or you could do that. And sometimes it's in the little things. Sometimes it's in the silly, joyful, playful things of, like, I don't know, snorkeling. Sometimes it's as small as believing that you can't go snorkeling, or you couldn't possibly go on a paddle boat. I don't know why all these examples have to do with water, but there you go. Sometimes it's beliefs and understandings about yourself that diminish all the intuitive nudges that you're getting. So what are some ways that you can recognize that you are disconnected from your intuition? Well, first is a deep and persistent sense of doubting every action that you want to take. Every action, every thought of an action, every opportunity is doubted. It can be something as simple as taking a single night class just to see if you like something, or watching a YouTube video tutorial to learn something to see if you want to do that thing. Oftentimes it can be as minute as moving on. So this consistent, persistent self-doubt in actions and desires that you have for yourself that are deeply and truly held. You may believe that you can't write because you can't spell. That's one of the most common things that people say about wanting to write. But if you can talk, you have an idea, dictate it to your recorder and say, I have this idea about this thing, and the recorder will spell everything for you. Your spell check We have spell check now. We have Google. We have all of these things. But somehow in your mind and in yourself, there's the seed of doubt. And so these small, inconsequential things become the reason you can't do it. Like being able to spell, like being on video and having a pimple, or having a bad hair day or something. These little things that really, they don't really matter. You can get past that. We have dictionaries. You could take a dictionary if you have to go down to the bare basics to learn to spell and all of that if you wanted to write. And what's really happening is what's underneath that self-doubt is the fear of being seen, being heard, being understood, existing, or taking an action towards something and failing. And that by failing, you're bad. When really failure is just the first step in the direction of anything that is worth having. Truly. If you want to have something that is long-term goalish, you're going to fail, you're going to do it again. You're going to fail, you're going to do it again. You're going to fail, you're going to do it again. And that being able to get up and do something again because your intuition will not let you stop doing the thing, that is how you know that your intuition is guiding you past something that your mind could ever conceive. Because your mind is saying, well, I failed 3 times. Some writers send their script 100 times and they get a successful, a publisher on the 101st. So what's the harm? So this persistent self-doubt is one way that you know that you are disconnected from your intuition in that. The second way you know you are disconnected from your intuition is you overthink, overanalyze, and So your intuition might be saying, become a baker. Become a baker. Learn to bake. And then you say, well, I can't measure and I can't do this, or okay, I'm gonna try. But then you watch YouTube tutorials for a year and you never pick up a measuring cup. You never buy the flour. You never buy the yeast. You never do the thing. And then you're wanting to open your baking business. So then you watch all these videos about baking businesses and you see this person failed. So you think you shouldn't do it. And oh, how can I? And instead of taking a single action, you get stuck in over analyzing to the point of never even taking the first step that your intuition told you to take, which was become a baker, learn to bake, open a weekend business baking, do a pop-up, sell at this market. Because you see, intuition gives you these baby steps that you can start to follow, and you decide if you're going to follow them or not. And you cannot see where it is going to take you. You cannot see that. You cannot plan that. You cannot analyze that to the point of knowing what the next step is going to be. Another way that you know you are disconnected from your intuition is that you fall back on the common roles of trauma survivors, which is being a people pleaser. I'm going to show up, I'm going to make everybody happy, I'm going to make sure everybody's happy, because if everybody's happy, has everybody ever been happy, and were you included in that? Have you ever been able to do it? That's my question to all the people pleasers. Have you ever been able to make every single person happy, including yourself? Or do you believe you don't count? Oftentimes you don't believe you count. Same thing goes for my caregivers. While you're caring for everybody else, are you caring for yourself to the same extent, not to a lesser degree? Perfectionist. Have you ever been able to step out perfectly, to make that thing perfectly, to do it perfectly on the first time? No? Yeah, these are all ways that you're disconnecting from your intuition and leaning back on the roles that you're wired to accept and to walk in as trauma survivors. You're wired to fall back on these roles over investing in connecting with yourself and listening to your intuition. Because your intuition isn't just going to tell you about things like become a baker or do this fun thing this weekend or go to that event. It's also going to tell you, hey, don't hang out with them anymore. And you may not understand why. And sometimes the safest thing for you is to not find out why. Maybe you don't want to find out why. This video is already getting a little long, so let's move on. So what is the first step in beginning to build the connection with your intuition? The first step is I feel like the first step is the biggest step, but the first step is to grow your sense of trust in yourself. And that is the hardest step you'll ever take. When you say, I thought that thing, maybe I should listen to me. Maybe I'm a person worth listening to. Maybe I'm a person who has an opinion that should be heard by me. Maybe I should hear my own opinion or thought about that thing and follow through with it. If you want to take that first step towards self-trust, it might begin with something you've always wanted to do, a small thing, like writing, journaling, yoga, whatever that little thing is that's a nudge in the direction. This can truly help you begin to walk with your intuition, to learn to hear your intuition. If you feel like you can't hear your intuition and you override your intuition and fear steps in and takes over, all the doubts step in and take over, and it is really difficult to take those first steps. We're going to be talking all about intuition, learning to trust the self, and awakening the connection to intuition and self this month here on the podcast and also over on the Substack. So, follow along for that. There will be more videos about this. I will see you next time. Take care.